Mistress stole billionaire from pregnant wife, but karma had other plans. Lightning flickered across the velvet sky as Lucy Preston stood on the marble steps of her once happy home. She was 7 months pregnant, her hand gently curved over the life growing inside her. News of her husband's affair had hit like a thunderbolt. A mistress with glimmering red curls, a betrayal as cruel as the bitter wind slicing through the night. Yet amid her heartbreak and humiliation, a spark of fierce determination ignited in Lucy's spirit. She didn't know it then, but this storm would transform her into a woman far stronger than she ever imagined. And karma was already stirring. Lucy Preston was born in a quaint coastal town where dawn often swept in with golden sunlight, kissing the rolling waves that spread beyond the horizon. Her mother, Rosemary, juggled 2 jobs to raise Lucy single-handedly, instilling in her daughter a sense of unwavering perseverance. From an early age, Lucy believed that dedication and kindness could conquer the harshest storms. She grew up chasing seagulls along the shore, sea breeze tangling her honey-blonde hair as she dreamed of building a future far grander than her humble beginnings. At 19, Lucy left that salt-kissed harbour behind for the bustling city of Fairview, where she enrolled at a local university. Balancing classes by day and waitressing by night, Lucy managed to save every extra dollar for textbooks. She thrived on the city's energy cars honking at all hours, neon signs blazing against the skyline, and the promise that dreams could flourish in the most unexpected places. It was in her junior year that she met James Preston. He strode into the university's library wearing an impeccably tailored suit, a bright tie, and a confidence that made heads turn. James came from an influential family that owned several real estate properties and a rising tech investment firm. He exuded charisma, yet something about his earnest smile and the curiosity in his eyes caught Lucy off guard. She was used to men who overlooked her as just another scholarship student. But James looked at her like he wanted to unravel every sentence she wrote in the margins of her textbooks. Their first conversation spanned 3 hours in the library's hushed corners, covering everything from Lucy's love of classic literature to James's fascination with innovative business models. James was impressed by Lucy's warmth and determination. Lucy was drawn to James's intellect and sincerity. They began dating, and as the months slipped by, Lucy felt an exhilarating sense of belonging. She had expected James to be arrogant, but he showed genuine interest in her world, her family photos, the close-knit friendships she nurtured, and her dream of one day writing a novel. When Lucy turned 23, she graduated with honors in communications, and James proposed in a garden lit by twinkling fairy lights. Holding out a modest diamond ring, James promised her a life of shared passions and unwavering loyalty. Lucy, tears shining in her eyes, said yes. James's family, the Prestons, welcomed her politely, though Lucy sometimes sensed a subtle barrier with his mother, Clarissa, whose aristocratic mannerisms made Lucy feel out of place. Still, Lucy's own mother adored James, describing him as the son-in-law I always prayed for. Their marriage combined Lucy's bright optimism and James's calculated ambition. James joined his father's real estate investment firm, Preston Holdings, rising quickly through the ranks due to his keen instincts and knack for connecting with influential associates. Lucy found a job as a communications coordinator in a non-profit organization that focused on youth development. For a while, they lived in a small, cozy apartment, content with each other's company. Then success expanded James's world. He began traveling frequently for business, sealing deals in New York, San Francisco, and London. Lucy often teased him that he would collect more air miles than footsteps at home, but she knew how important his career was. Despite the hectic schedule, James never missed a chance to call Lucy before bed, whispering sweet notes about the day when they could slow down and start a family. Life moved with a comforting hum. Soon, James's entrepreneurial project soared, specifically a venture into tech investments that multiplied his wealth within 2 years. With his newfound fortune, James insisted on upgrading their living arrangements, buying a luxurious penthouse in Fairview's upscale district. Lucy was hesitant, wary of losing herself in the glitter of wealth, but James convinced her it was an investment for their future. And for a time, it was beautiful dinner parties with panoramic city views, philanthropic galas where Lucy wore elegant gowns. She never dreamt she'd own. Their love felt solid, strong enough to weather any storm. At 27, Lucy discovered she was pregnant. The news filled their penthouse with a new sense of excitement and love. James cut back on some of his trips, focusing on Lucy's health and the promise of fatherhood. They transformed a spare room into a nursery, painting it a pale mint green and placing stuffed animals on every shelf. Lucy felt her heart bloom each time she caught James humming lullabies while assembling the crib. She believed that love rooted in loyalty and shared dreams would keep them steady in a fast-paced world. But fate has a way of sowing cracks beneath even the strongest foundations. Whispers of change began floating through Lucy's life like an unsettling breeze. New faces in James's social sphere, late-night phone calls, and an undercurrent of secrecy Lucy had never felt before. She trusted James implicitly, but an unease began to gnaw at her heart. She told herself it was just pregnancy hormones, anxieties about parenthood. Little did she know, a shadow was already lurking in the corners, waiting to destroy the life she cherished. Lucy's pregnancy brought out facets of her personality she never knew she had: fierce protectiveness, tender longing, and an ever-persistent sense of wonder. She loved feeling her baby's kicks, tiny reminders that new life stirred within her. During the day, she balanced checkups with her job, which she had switched to part-time hours as her due date inched closer. In the evenings, she found comfort in reading parenting books and journaling her thoughts about motherhood. James, meanwhile, was busier than ever. With his rising wealth, he'd begun exploring broader horizons, forging relationships with CEOs and politicians. Lucy sometimes joked that they needed an appointment just to have dinner together. Yet she admired his tenacity. Every glance at the penthouse's glimmering skyline reminded her of how far they had come from the small apartment. But soon, subtle changes in James's demeanor began to tug at Lucy's intuition. He became guarded with his phone, often stepping into another room when it rang. Late-night meetings and weekend business trips multiplied. Lucy attempted to quash her concerns. James's ambition had always demanded unsociable hours. Still, a quiet dread crept in. One evening, Lucy entered the living room to find James poring over real estate documents with a woman she didn't recognize. Tall, with mahogany hair and an air of calculated poise, the woman turned and offered Lucy a sleek smile. She introduced herself as Isabel Aldridge, an investment partner from the East Coast. James quickly mentioned they were finalizing a deal for a chain of luxury boutique hotels. He sounded excited, though Lucy sensed an electric tension in the air. Isabel spoke in a polished, low voice that commanded attention, mentioning her prior experiences at the Ritz-Carlton in Chicago. She carried herself with a blend of sophistication and unwavering confidence. Lucy smiled politely, feeling out of place in her maternity dress and slippers. She retreated to the kitchen, heart pounding, without fully understanding why. That night, as she drifted to sleep, the vision of Isabel lingered in her mind. She wasn't sure why the woman's presence unsettled her, but she couldn't ignore the sudden chill in her own home. Over the following weeks, the name Isabel crept up more frequently than Lucy liked. James praised Isabel's financial brilliance, her knack for closing deals under pressure. Lucy found herself forcing smiles, nodding in support whenever James spoke of upcoming investor gatherings that Isabel would also attend. Meanwhile, Lucy often remained home, her swollen ankles reminding her that traveling was no longer easy. It wasn't just business references that worried Lucy. There were new behaviors from James. A phone that buzzed with texts at odd hours. Fleeting expressions of guilt crossing his face when Lucy walked into a room unannounced. The quiet way he'd erase. Call logs before setting his phone down. Lucy tried confronting him gently, asking if anything was wrong. "Work is intense," he muttered, avoiding her eyes. "These deals are complicated. I'm just trying to stay on top." She accepted his explanation for a time, attributing her wariness to her body's hormonal upheavals. But a part of her whispered that something was amiss. Her motherly instincts, amplified by pregnancy, sensed a danger that lurked beyond normal business stress. The next tremor of doubt arrived through a friend's offhand comment. At a charity function for the Fairview Cultural Center, Lucy's friend Jasmine casually noted that she spotted James leaving the event with some woman in a red gown. Lucy smiled awkwardly, swallowing the surge of alarm. She reminded Jasmine that James's colleague Isabel often wore striking colors and accompanied him to formal gatherings. "I see," Jasmine said, sympathy glinting in her eyes. Lucy felt as though she was being pitied, a sensation that left her stomach churning for days. One late afternoon, Lucy was organizing baby clothes in the nursery, carefully folding each pastel outfit. She heard James's phone buzz on the living room table. A single message preview flashed across the screen. "Isabel, missing you." Lucy froze. Her heart hammered so loudly she worried the baby might feel her panic. Summoning courage, Lucy opened the phone's lock screen. She'd never snooped on James's phone before, but dread stilled her better judgment. The message continued, "Missing you. Tonight can't come soon enough." Lucy felt her knees buckle. She gripped the back of the couch, breathing in slow, measured counts to keep from collapsing. She read a few earlier texts, casual banter laced with innuendo. There was no explicit mention of romance, but Lucy knew the tone was too intimate to be purely professional. When James returned that evening, Lucy confronted him, tears already burning her cheeks. He denied any wrongdoing, painting her concerns as paranoia. "I can't believe you'd invade my privacy," he snapped, though he tried to sound hurt rather than furious. Lucy, trembling with heartbreak, explained that she merely glimpsed the messages by accident. The guilt and defensiveness in James's eyes were unmistakable. A few moments later, he fled the penthouse, muttering something about late meeting. Lucy sat alone in the silent living room, one hand protectively over her belly, the other wiping away tears. She gazed around at the polished floor, high ceilings, expensive decor. None of it offered comfort. All that mattered was the flicker of life inside her and the sinking dread that her marriage might be crumbling under a stranger's spell. The next morning, Lucy woke to a cold emptiness in bed. James hadn't returned. She spent hours pacing the penthouse, phone clutched in her hand, but no calls came. The day dragged by in an agonizing hush. Evening arrived, and finally the door swung open. James appeared, hair disheveled, eyes downcast. He offered no explanation for his absence, only murmuring a half-hearted apology. Lucy demanded honesty, her voice trembling. Instead, James turned sullen, as though annoyed by her accusations. He insisted that Isabel was just a brilliant associate who admired his work ethic, that Lucy was overreacting. When Lucy pressed him about the incriminating texts, he waved it off as harmless flirtation. "It's how the business world functions sometimes," he said, his tone condescending. "Networking can be personal. Don't blow this out of proportion." In her heart, Lucy recognized the cracks in their relationship could no longer be patched with empty reassurances. She remembered the nights spent with James discussing their dreams, the laughter shared over cheap pizza in their first cramped apartment. How had they fallen so far? Days turned into weeks, and Lucy found herself increasingly alone in the penthouse. James's business trips multiplied, often with Isabel in tow. Lucy, now 8 months pregnant, struggled to sleep. She experienced sharp pains in her back and ankles, the stress of suspicion weighing on every breath. Despite her heartbreak, she refused to let her unborn child sense only turmoil. She forced herself to watch feel-good comedies, to breathe deeply during her prenatal yoga sessions, whispering encouragement to her baby. One afternoon, Lucy ventured out to a local cafe near the towering Fairview skyscrapers, seeking a brief escape from the cavernous emptiness of home. While sipping a lavender latte, she heard a conversation at the next table about a recent real estate mixer. Her attention pricked when she recognized James's name. Two executives whispered that James had arrived with an exquisite woman on his arm, more affectionate than businesslike. Lucy's heart pounded. She forced herself to remain calm, finishing her drink despite the tears threatening to spill. Returning to the penthouse, she discovered a note from James, working late. Don't wait up. No explanation, no warmth, no mention of how she was feeling. Lucy sank onto the plush couch, glaring at the city lights that spread beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. It occurred to her that wealth brought more than comfort. It magnified the emptiness if love was missing. In a desperate bid for clarity, Lucy visited Clarissa Preston, James's mother. She found Clarissa in her lavish townhouse, sipping tea from bone china. Lucy explained the situation, her voice breaking as she confessed how fear and suspicion plagued her final weeks of pregnancy. Clarissa sighed, setting her cup down with a clink. She placed a cold, manicured hand on Lucy's shoulder. "My dear," Clarissa murmured, "I've heard some rumors, but men like James are complicated. He's under tremendous pressure. Try to be patient for your child's sake." Lucy withdrew from Clarissa's touch, realizing the older woman's concern was overshadowed by a long, ingrained acceptance of how powerful men often behaved. Lucy left the townhouse feeling numb. She had hoped for an ally, but instead received the same placating sentiments that left her feeling unimportant. That night, Lucy called her mother, Rosemary, who lived far from Fairview's glitz. Rosemary sensed her daughter's distress from the quiver in Lucy's voice. "Come home for a while," she suggested gently. "You need to rest. The baby's almost due. Let me take care of you." Lucy considered it, longing for the simplicity of home, but her child's nursery was in the penthouse, and she still clung to a sliver of hope that James would snap out of whatever spell held him. Lucy said she'd think about it. After the call, she stood in the nursery, running her fingers over the pastel walls. She recalled the day James helped her paint the room, splattering mint green across his designer jeans, laughing about how fatherhood would change everything. A tear slipped down her cheek as she wondered where that man had gone. Lucy's suspicions solidified into grim reality when she heard the dreaded confirmation from James's own lips. It happened on a stormy night, just 2 weeks before her due date. Rain battered the glass windows and thunder shook the penthouse. Lucy's back ached from carrying the extra weight of her baby, and her emotions were already frayed by James's erratic behavior. Late in the evening, James stumbled home, the scent of expensive wine on his breath. Lucy observed his rumpled suit, the undone tie. He looked exhausted, yet there was a strange intensity in his eyes. Summoning all her courage, Lucy confronted him again about Isabel, voice wavering but resolute. "You owe me the truth," she said, one hand braced against her belly. "Are you seeing her?" He opened his mouth to dodge, but then something inside him broke. "Lucy," he breathed, running a hand through his hair. "I never intended to hurt you. It was a mistake, but it happened. Isabel and I." Lucy felt the air rush out of her lungs. She clutched the back of a chair to keep from collapsing. Even though she'd suspected it, hearing it was a dagger to the heart. Her mind reeled, recalling the tender moments they once shared, the vows exchanged under fairy lights. Now all overshadowed by a single name, Isabel. "Why?" Lucy whispered, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I gave you everything, my trust, my love. We have a baby on the way." James's gaze flickered with shame. He sank onto a nearby sofa, burying his face in his hands. He mumbled something about how Isabel understood his ambitions, how being with her felt electric in a way he couldn't explain. Lucy listened in horror, unable to fathom that her husband had traded their committed bond for a fleeting thrill. The argument escalated. Lucy shouted accusations. James snapped back defensively, insisting it was just an affair that meant nothing. The callousness of that word "nothing" speared Lucy. Her chest constricted, she could hardly breathe. The stress was overwhelming, and she feared for her unborn child's health amid her racing heartbeat and trembling hands. Finally, Lucy managed to speak through sobs. "I want you to leave," she said, trembling with anger and betrayal. James opened his mouth to protest, but Lucy shot him a glare that silenced him. She pointed toward the door. He rose unsteadily, grabbing his coat without another word. As the door slammed shut, Lucy stood there, chest heaving, the baby kicking as if alarmed by the tension. She pressed a hand to her belly, whispering soothing words to her child. Waves of disbelief and devastation crashed over her. She realized that, for all the luxury that surrounded her, she was utterly alone. She eventually sank onto the living room floor, tears soaking her cardigan. The city lights glowed mockingly beyond the window, indifferent to her pain. The next day, Lucy began packing. She would return to her mother's house, where love was unconditional and the air smelled of home-cooked meals instead of heartbreak. She scrolled through her phone contacts, ignoring messages from James, who typed paragraph after paragraph, apologizing, claiming confusion. Lucy's tears had dried, replaced by a dull ache in her chest. Before she left, Lucy scrawled a note on the kitchen island. "I need peace. Don't follow me." Then she glanced around the penthouse one last time, recalling the hopeful girl she'd been, a pregnant wife. Certain that loyalty would conquer all. Her heart pounded with finality as the elevator doors slid shut. At that moment, Lucy had no idea how her story would unfold, but she knew that the life she once treasured was gone. In the warm, welcoming space of Rosemary's modest home, Lucy found a semblance of peace. A small bedroom became her refuge, its walls adorned with faded photographs of her childhood. A single window overlooked a patch of wildflowers where butterflies flitted in the morning sun. The quiet was a balm for Lucy's shattered spirit. Each night, she fell asleep to the soft drone of crickets rather than the hollow hush of the penthouse. 2 weeks after Lucy's arrival, labor pangs gripped her. It was a blistering afternoon in early summer. Rosemary helped Lucy into the car, voice trembling yet reassuring, as they drove the winding roads to Fairview General Hospital, an unassuming brick building known for its compassionate maternity ward. Lucy clutched her mother's hand, heart hammering not only with pain, but with the raw terror of stepping into motherhood under a cloud of heartbreak. Hours of labor threatened to break her resolve, but Lucy remembered why she endured. She focused on the life stirring inside her, summoning every ounce of determination. In a whirl of bright operating lights and measured instructions, Lucy gave birth to a baby boy. His cries pierced the hospital room with a vitality that shook Lucy's battered soul. Tears streamed down her face as a nurse placed the newborn in her arms. She named him Noah, symbolizing a fresh start, a promise of salvation after a storm. In that miraculous moment, Lucy's heart expanded beyond the borders of her anguish. Noah was small, his features delicate, yet his presence was immeasurably powerful. The pain of the past months receded into a distant corner of her mind, replaced by an overwhelming desire to protect and nurture her son. She pressed a gentle kiss to Noah's tiny forehead, whispering an unspoken vow to always stand by him. Rosemary hovered nearby, weeping tears of joy. Nurses congratulated Lucy, handing her warm blankets and helping her feed Noah for the first time. Though her body was exhausted and her emotions raw, Lucy felt an incandescent love surge within her. She cradled Noah carefully, memorizing his every movement, his fluttering eyelids, the quiver of his lips, the minute fingers that wrapped around her own. A day later, as Lucy rested in her hospital bed, she spotted a shadow in the hallway. James. He stepped inside, gazing at Lucy with a mixture of hesitation and longing. Part of Lucy wanted to shout at him to leave, but another part remembered that Noah was his child too. She allowed James to approach, feeling her heart twist at the sight of his red-rimmed eyes and slumped shoulders. He apologized in a hushed tone, tears brimming. Watching James pick Noah up for the first time, Lucy observed a flicker of genuine wonder in his gaze. She had expected him to reek of guilt or arrogance, but instead he wore an expression of awe. For a moment, Lucy recalled how she once believed in James's capacity for tenderness, how they dreamed of forming a perfect family. Now, the bitterness of betrayal clashed with her desire to give her son every chance at a supportive father. Through that day, James drifted in and out of the hospital room, murmuring regrets that Lucy barely acknowledged. She needed time to heal, physically and emotionally, and her priority was Noah, not mending James's conscience. Eventually, Lucy asked James to leave, offering a curt explanation that she was too tired to talk further. 2 days later, Lucy returned to her mother's home with Noah in her arms. The house swelled with warmth, neighbors stopping by with homemade casseroles, close friends dropping off hand-knitted blankets. Noah's presence was a blessing that overshadowed Lucy's heartbreak. She found solace in the quiet moments, holding him close in a rocking chair, singing lullabies late into the night. In those gentle hours, Lucy vowed to rebuild a life that would nurture her child's innocence and joy. James's attempts to contact her became frequent texts and voicemails filled with remorse. He claimed he had broken off all ties with Isabel, that he wanted to be part of Noah's life. Lucy didn't know whether to believe him. She felt the sting of his betrayal too acutely to let him back into her world without proof of genuine change. For now, she focused on the tiny heartbeat that fluttered against her chest, praying that love and resilience would guide her forward. Even with Noah's sweet coos and Lucy's determination to forge a peaceful life, echoes of James's betrayal reverberated. The local gossip mill churned ceaselessly. Fairview's social circles buzzed with speculation about James Preston's scandalous affair. Lucy heard from an old friend that Isabel had been spotted at extravagant parties, flaunting her connection to the once rising millionaire. Rumors hinted that James's business associates were wary. Some partners threatened to withdraw due to the negative publicity. Lucy did her best to ignore such talk. Her focus was on Noah's daily milestones, his first smile, the way he curled his tiny fingers around Lucy's hair whenever she held him close. Still, she couldn't escape news about James's unraveling empire. One day, while reading a local magazine, Lucy stumbled across a feature spotlight on Preston Holdings. The article praised James's father, but noted that James's personal issues threatened to tarnish the company's image. She felt a pang of bitter satisfaction, though part of her pitied him. James, to his credit, made consistent efforts to visit Noah. The first time he arrived at Rosemary's house, Lucy felt her stomach twist in anxious knots. She stood on the porch, Noah in her arms, not knowing whether to greet James with anger or courtesy. He extended a bouquet of lilies, an old favorite of Lucy's from when they first dated. She accepted them mutely, stepping aside to let him in. Inside, the conversation was polite but strained. James seemed genuinely eager to hold Noah, kissing the baby's forehead with trembling lips. Lucy observed him cautiously, a swirl of memories colliding with her desire to protect Noah at all costs. She permitted James to spend an hour talking and playing with their son. Then Lucy gently ended the visit, citing that Noah needed his nap. James left quietly, an expression of regret shadowing his face. That became their pattern. James visited once or twice a week, sometimes bearing small gifts. Lucy never asked about Isabel, but she noticed how James avoided naming her altogether. As the weeks passed, Lucy observed subtle changes in him, his once slick confidence frayed at the edges. The triumphant aura dimmed to contrition. He started asking Lucy about Noah's medical checkups, volunteering to accompany them. Sometimes she allowed it, grateful for the extra hand, but she maintained a protective, emotional barrier. And then a bombshell arrived in the form of a legal notice. One crisp morning, a courier delivered an envelope to Rosemary's door. Lucy opened it with trepidation, her heart leaping as she read the official letter. It was a lawsuit. Several of James's high-profile deals had turned sour, leading investors to claim fraud. Lucy, as James's wife, was named in some capacity, her signature apparently used on certain business documents. Lucy's hands shook with fury and fear, realizing her personal finances and future security could be entangled in James's downfall. Immediately, Lucy called her lawyer, a recommendation from a friend. The lawyer calmed her, explaining that, depending on her involvement, Lucy might be exonerated from liability. But it would require a legal separation or divorce, as well as a thorough accounting of James's business practices. Lucy felt tears burning at the back of her eyes. She had never imagined her marriage would end in such turmoil, and yet protecting Noah was now paramount. That evening, Lucy texted James, demanding answers. He arrived at Rosemary's house, shoulders sagging, his voice a hoarse whisper, as he explained that, in an attempt to secure a risky real estate deal, some documents had included Lucy's name to project familial stability to certain conservative investors. James claimed he'd planned to share it with Lucy after everything was finalized, to avoid stressing her during pregnancy. Lucy balked at the betrayal. She saw now that it wasn't just about the affair. James had exploited her trust in more ways than one. Faced with Lucy's silent wrath, James pleaded for forgiveness. He admitted that his arrogance and longing for success had led him astray, culminating in heartbreak for them both. Lucy felt no solace in his confessions. She politely but firmly asked him to leave, making it clear that her priority was ensuring she and Noah wouldn't be dragged into a legal quagmire. That night, Lucy cradled Noah in the moonlit nursery, tears streaming down her cheeks as she comprehended the magnitude of James's deceit. She vowed that no matter how deep the betrayal, she would stand firm and protect her child. Slowly, the tide of karma began rolling in. Word spread that Isabel Aldridge was courting new investors, drifting away from James's faltering projects. Lucy caught snippets of rumors that Isabel was often seen with another affluent businessman, forging an alliance in pursuit of even bigger profits. James, with his personal life in disarray and lawsuits stacking up, found his once stellar reputation tarnishing faster than a neglected piece of silver. Lucy watched these developments from a distance, torn between relief and sorrow. She didn't relish James's downfall, but a part of her felt a grim satisfaction that the illusions he'd chased were crumbling. Even Clarissa Preston, once unwaveringly proud of her son, had grown subdued in social appearances. Lucy heard that Clarissa had scolded James for his reckless actions privately but fiercely. Meanwhile, Lucy's daily routine revolved around Noah. He was her lifeline of joy, his soft giggles and bright-eyed wonder shining through every grey day. As she adjusted to motherhood, Lucy discovered new depths of resilience within herself. She overcame sleepless nights, juggled diaper changes, and learned to read the subtle cues of Noah's wants and needs. Each milestone, his first attempts at rolling over, the way he grasped a rattle reaffirmed Lucy's commitment to building a stable world for him. To support herself and Noah, Lucy began freelance consulting in communications. She worked from Rosemary's dining table, laptop open amid scattered baby blankets. Though the pay was modest, it allowed Lucy to contribute to household expenses and maintain a semblance of independence. She realized, with a sense of irony, that her communications background helped her craft campaigns that others would use to shape reputations and art. James had abused in his pursuits of wealth. James's visits continued, albeit sporadically. On certain afternoons, he showed up looking haggard, but desperate to see Noah. Lucy always allowed it, ensuring her mother or a friend was around. She wasn't yet ready to trust James alone with her baby, not until the legal matters were clarified and James's intentions were truly honorable. She noticed a growing weariness in him, a sense that he'd lost the shimmering illusions that once propelled him. Eventually, Lucy summoned the courage to file for legal separation. She wept quietly after signing the papers, haunted by the memory of exchanging vows in a modest church ceremony, surrounded by people who believed in their forever. Yet she realized that holding on to a broken marriage out of sentimentality would only harm her child in the long run. She had to protect both herself and Noah. Around this time, Lucy received an unexpected phone call from an editor at the New York Times. They were investigating a feature on the pitfalls of unchecked ambition in real estate. James Preston's case had reached their radar. The editor asked if Lucy was willing to share her perspective anonymously, if preferred. Lucy declined, not wanting to fan the flames of scandal. But the mere request confirmed how widely James's downfall had spread. In the quiet evenings, Lucy often found herself rocking Noah to sleep, watching the moon cast silvery light on the lawn. She felt an ache for the dreams she once cradled: a loving marriage, a united family. But she also sensed a burgeoning inner strength, tested by heartbreak and guided by the pure love she felt for her son. Karma had begun to unravel James's illusions, but Lucy learned it wasn't just about retribution. It was about personal rebirth, breaking free from illusions to discover one's true resilience. Months passed, and Lucy's life settled into a fragile new normal. She remained at her mother's cozy home, cherishing the simplicity of a front porch swing, fresh laundry hung under the sun, and nightly lullabies for Noah. Her freelance consulting grew steadily, and she managed to save enough to plan for a small rented apartment in the city once. Noah was a bit older. Each day, Lucy recognized glimmers of the self-reliant girl she used to be, now sharpened by adversity. James's legal troubles persisted. Lucy learned that some lawsuits ended in hefty settlements. Preston Holdings was forced to downsize, shedding staff and halting several real estate projects. The once lavish penthouse James purchased now stood empty, rumored to be on the market to cover mounting expenses. Even Clarissa had moved to a smaller townhouse, embarrassed by the public spectacle and eager to avoid whispers among her social circle. Lucy's separation from James proceeded, with lawyers exchanging documents to clarify financial responsibilities. James insisted he wanted to provide child support, though his dwindling resources made that complicated. Lucy quietly appreciated the gesture, but resolved to support Noah independently if James's money dried up. She refused to let her son become collateral in James's battles. Throughout this turmoil, Isabel Aldridge had seemingly disappeared from James's orbit, rumored to be in Europe seeking new partnerships. Lucy gleaned from acquaintances that Isabel left a trail of broken alliances behind her, pivoting smoothly whenever a deal turned sour. Lucy felt a pang of pity for James. He'd gambled on a fickle mistress, only to lose everything he once held dear. Perhaps ironically, Lucy found a stable friend in Kyle Moran, her lawyer. Kyle was gentle yet firm, guiding Lucy through the complexities of separation and potential custody arrangements. Over coffee one afternoon, Lucy opened up about her heartbreak, confessing how she once believed money and love could coexist without corruption. Kyle listened attentively, reminding her that it was courage, not wealth, that formed the true backbone of any relationship. In time, Lucy gathered the courage to attend a local community meeting about small business support. She sat among other budding entrepreneurs, exchanging ideas on marketing and brand building. The synergy of hopeful voices inspired her to formalize her communications work into a small firm. Preston was no longer her last name, so she decided to revert legally to Lucy Thompson, thus reclaiming the identity she had before marriage. She named her nascent venture Brightwave Consulting, symbolizing the constant movement and renewal of life, much like the ocean waves of her childhood. Little by little, Lucy discovered that adversity could be the soil in which new dreams grew. She hired a part-time assistant to handle administrative tasks while she focused on strategic planning for non-profits and small businesses. The knowledge she'd once used to bolster James's social image was now helping genuine causes that needed a guiding hand. Late nights found Lucy at her mother's kitchen table, laptop humming, Noah sleeping in a cradle nearby. She also began forging deeper bonds with local entrepreneurs, many of whom admired her grit. They didn't see her as the scorned wife of a millionaire undone by scandal. They saw a single mother balancing a toddler on one hip while offering insightful advice on public relations campaigns. In this circle, Lucy felt acceptance and purpose growing beyond the confines of her past. Through it all, Noah thrived. His laughter echoed in the backyard as he grew from a soft, delicate newborn into a bright-eyed toddler. He babbled words that melted Lucy's heart, tiny footsteps pattering across the wooden floor. Lucy couldn't imagine a life more fulfilling than guiding her son into the world, teaching him kindness and resilience, virtues that had become her own lifeline. As Lucy settled into a calmer existence, James's presence continued in the form of scheduled visitations with Noah. He arrived every other weekend, rarely wearing the polished suits of his earlier days. Instead, he showed up in jeans, sometimes with groceries or small toys for the boy. Lucy watched him carefully, noticing how fatherhood seemed to ground him. He'd spend hours reading storybooks to Noah or pushing him on a swing in the backyard. No illusions or bravado, just a man trying to connect with his child. One late afternoon, after a cordial but brief handover of Noah, Lucy stepped onto the porch to find James lingering. He fidgeted, clearly wanting to say something. Lucy felt her pulse quicken, uncertain of what he might reveal. "Lucy," he began softly, "I'm sorry to intrude, but I need to tell you something important. The final court settlement is draining my funds. I'm selling the penthouse." He rubbed his forehead, eyes filled with sorrow. "It's part of my penance, I guess. I wanted you to know that I plan to pay what I can for Noah's future, but there may be less than promised." Lucy studied him, recalling how grand he'd once been, only to witness him standing humbled, hair ruffled by the wind. She felt a conflict of emotions, anger at the chaos he'd unleashed, pity for the man who'd lost himself chasing illusions, and a quiet relief that he was acknowledging reality. She nodded stiffly. "I appreciate you telling me," Lucy replied, "but we'll manage. Noah and I will be fine, with or without your money." James swallowed, gaze dipping to the porch steps. He hesitated before speaking again. "You've become so strong, Lucy. I'm proud of you, and it makes me realize how foolish I was, how much I took for granted." Lucy didn't respond to his remorse. Her feelings were far too complex to be resolved by a handful of regretful words. After a moment of silence, she walked back inside, leaving James to grapple with his reflections. She wasn't ready to forgive or forget. She only wanted to keep forging her own path forward. Weeks later, James called unexpectedly one morning. His voice trembled with panic. "Lucy, I need help. Or rather, we do." He explained that his mother, Clarissa, had collapsed with stress-related complications. She was hospitalized, alone and scared. Lucy felt an instinctive surge of empathy. Despite Clarissa's frosty manner, Lucy understood the older woman's deep love for her family. Without hesitation, Lucy left Noah in Rosemary's care and drove to the hospital. She found Clarissa in a dimly lit ward, and the fourth drip in her arm, looking more fragile than Lucy had ever seen. James stood by the bed, eyes moist. Lucy approached tentatively, placing a hand on Clarissa's shoulder. For a fleeting moment, the tension of their past dissolved. Clarissa managed a weak smile. "Thank you for coming. I'm sorry for all that's happened," she said, her voice raspy. "James made such mistakes, but he's my son. I never meant to drive you away or condone his actions. I just hoped he'd realize his errors before it was too late." Lucy nodded, heart softening. She understood now that heartbreak wasn't a solitary affliction. It rippled through families, altering bonds and forging unexpected alliances. Over the next few days, Lucy helped coordinate doctors' visits, ensuring Clarissa had a comfortable recovery. James expressed deep gratitude, though Lucy maintained emotional distance. Still, she felt a shift, like a final bridge between them was being built, if only for Noah's sake. Upon Clarissa's discharge, Lucy returned to her routine, but a lingering awareness tugged at her. She recognized James's attempts at redemption, small though they might be, and she realized that while they might never restore their marriage, the threads that connected them, Noah, shared memories, and the simple human desire to be understood remained. Time has a way of mending wounds, but scars remain reminders of lessons learned. By the time Noah was 2 years old, Lucy's small consulting firm, Brightwave, had blossomed into a reputable local business. She juggled client meetings with toddler playdates, forging a life that felt authentically hers. The echoes of betrayal still lingered in her heart, but they no longer defined her days. James stabilized, too, albeit far from the heights he once inhabited. He moved to a modest apartment in a quieter district, taking a mid-level position at a different real estate firm. His father's company had distanced itself from James's controversies, but he found contentment in smaller successes. His relationship with Noah deepened. On weekends, father and son played soccer in a local park or visited the city aquarium. Lucy witnessed their bond with a mixture of relief and guarded hope. The final verdict on the lawsuits allowed James to settle most debts, though he'd never regained the same financial prowess. Ironically, the scandal taught him humility. He volunteered at local charities, occasionally collaborating with Lucy's philanthropic clients on fundraising events. The two of them navigated a cautious friendship, an alliance for the sake of their child. One brisk autumn morning, Lucy found an unexpected envelope in her mailbox, a letter from Isabel Aldridge. The postmark suggested it was sent from overseas. Lucy's hands trembled as she ripped it open. Inside was a brief, scrawled note. "Lucy, I doubt you'll ever want to hear from me, but I need to say this. I'm sorry for what I did to your family. I chased wealth and power, not caring who I hurt along the way. James loved you deeply. Whatever we had was just an illusion. I've moved on, but I carry this guilt. May you and your child find peace." Isabel Lucy stared at the note, emotions swirling. She felt revulsion at the memory of Isabel, but also the faint stirrings of sympathy. The mistress who once flaunted her conquest had discovered how fickle ambition and desire could be. Perhaps this was Karma's final note, a reminder that every action ripples with consequences. Lucy tucked the letter away, uncertain if she'd ever mention it to James. Some closures are meant to remain private. With time, Lucy's bitterness toward James lessened. She recognized that her life had taken a path shaped by resilience. She was no longer the trusting girl waiting in a penthouse for a husband who betrayed her. She had become a confident business owner, a caring mother, and a woman who understood her own worth. No glitzy party or million-dollar deal could overshadow the quiet triumph of rebuilding from ashes. On Noah's third birthday, Lucy hosted a small gathering in Rosemary's backyard. Friends, neighbors, and a few of Lucy's new colleagues attended. James arrived with a humble gift, a handcrafted wooden train set that enthralled Noah. During the festivities, Lucy and James spoke easily, exchanging laughter at the sight of their son devouring chocolate cake. The moment felt surreal but warm, a gentle testament to how far they'd come. As twilight enveloped the yard, Lucy found herself alone with James near a row of hydrangeas. They stood side by side, watching Noah chase fireflies with delighted shrieks. For a heartbeat, Lucy recalled the day she and James painted Noah's nursery in the penthouse, back when hope seemed endless. Now, the hope was different, rooted in acceptance rather than illusions. "I'm proud of you," James said softly, glancing at Lucy. "You built something beautiful from all the pain I caused." Lucy nodded, eyes on Noah. "I had to, for him and for myself. And I'm grateful that you're stepping up as his father, even if we can't be what we once were." He gently touched her arm. "Thank you for giving me that chance." Silence settled between them, not awkward, but reflective. Lucy felt the ache of loss and the warmth of redemption coexisting within her. She couldn't say she forgave James entirely, but she acknowledged that they'd both changed. In the distant corners of her mind, she sensed that life's storms often clear the path for new beginnings, even if those beginnings differ from the ones you once envisioned. Noah ran up to them, giggling, demanding they join his firefly chase. Lucy lifted him into her arms, and James reached out, the three forming a small circle of tenuous unity. The wheel of fortune had turned, love had been lost, illusions shattered, but a different bond had risen from the wreckage. Heartache can carve deep wounds, yet it also creates a space where resilience can thrive. Lucy's story shows us that when betrayal dismantles our reality, it's possible to gather the pieces and rebuild something stronger. True love isn't found solely in vows or grand gestures. It reveals itself in quiet forgiveness, genuine growth, and the resolve to protect what truly matters. If Lucy's journey moved you or offered a glimpse of hope in your own struggles, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's fill this community with stories of courage and renewal. Don't forget to tap the like button and subscribe to our channel for more transformative tales. Turn on your notifications so you never miss a chance to discover the power of perseverance. Together, we celebrate the human spirit, one heartbreak, one triumph, and one new beginning at a time.